Gentlemen, start your engines.
25 champ cars sit ready to go. Their drivers sit in the cockpit prepared for 210 miles. In Cleveland, they're ready to rock and roll.
All this energy calling me. Back where it comes from. It's such a crude attitude. It's back where it belongs. Cleveland rocks.
Cleveland rocks.
Cleveland rocks.
Cleveland rocks.
It's Cleveland, Ohio, the home of rock and roll. We're at the Burt Lakefront Airport as the CART FedEx Championship Series is ready to go racing in the Marconi Grand Prix of Cleveland. Hi and welcome you. I know I said an airport. Don't shrug that off. This airport produces some of the best racing in this series.
And this airport circuit is wide. It ranges from between 75 to 150 feet in width. That's over 3 times the width of a normal road course. It's produced some great wheel-to-wheel, side-by-side racing action in the past. The track is also very bumpy, and it'll take its toll on these drivers and equipment before the checkered flag flies.
Let's get you right down to Gary Gerould.
Paul, the great width of this airport layout always makes for one of the most anticipated starts anywhere in the championship circuit. At Cleveland, you never quite know what's going to happen going into turn 1. And for the first time in his champ car career, Roberto Moreno, who is also the championship points leader, is going to be the man who dictates the pace and takes the field into turn 1. By 900ths of a second, he tops Gilles de Ferran. So the Penske team that's won 3 of the last 4 is right alongside in row number 1. It's going to be good. Let's go to Jan Vikas.
And Gary, some last-minute drama for both Michael Andretti.
Well, there is Michael Andretti. Jan Vikas wanted to report that he had an engine change just before the start of this race. His teammate, Christian Fittipaldi, had to change engines as well. They had an oil leak during the morning warm-up session. Now let's take a look at the starting grid for the race today. Roberto Moreno was ecstatic after finishing second at Portland and taking the point lead. Today, he hopes to increase that lead. He starts on the pole. Gilles de Ferran will start alongside. Now, de Ferran is on a roll, winning 2 of the last 3 races. He also won this race in 1996. The second row, Mauricio Gugelmin and Michael Andretti. Michael has climbed to 4th in the championship and is the 91 Cleveland winner. In row 3, Cristiano Damata and the defending series champion Juan Montoya. He has only 1 win, though, in 2000, but he is the defending champion here at Cleveland. Brian Herta is inside row 4. Dario Franchitti is on the outside of the 4th row. Adrian Fernandez and Penske driver Helio Castroneves make up row 5. Rookie Oriol Servia and Jimmy Vasser make up the 6th row. In row 7, it's Christian Fittipaldi. Max Pappas will start to the outside. The 8th row, Kenny Brack and Mark Blundell. In row number 9, Paul Tracy and Alex Tagliani. Tracy hasn't scored a championship point since Nazareth, but today he starts 17th. He won Long Beach from 17th. Patrick Carpentier and Michel Jourdain Jr. make up the 10th row. The 11th row, Shinji Nakano and Noberto Fontana. In row 12, Tarso Marquez and Luis Garcia Jr. And alone in the 13th row is Takuya Kurosawa. The race, 100 laps, 210.6 miles around this 2.1-mile temporary circuit. We'll take a look at the circuit here. Parker Johnstone.
The principal passing area is heading down into turn 1. It's 100 feet wide. The drivers break from 180 to 50 miles per hour. Also look for some action back in this long sweeping carousel 6, 7, and 8 section where the drivers are pulling a sustained 3 Gs. We've had action there all race weekend long.
And there is a big change for the start of this race. There is the straightaway. It's 100 feet wide, leading to the first turn. But see those 3 sets of cones? That's the change.
What they're trying to do is to prevent a first lap incident. Now, we had a first lap, first corner last week at Portland where some of the cars got together. This week, they're trying to prevent that. After the start, those 3 sets of cones will be removed.
Here are the onboards that we have for you today. Riding as always with Mark Blundell. Max Pappas, he'll be back starting 14th. Juan Montoya. Always exciting, especially to watch him over these bumps here. He starts 6th. Mauricio Gugelmin had a great qualifying, and he will start 3rd. The front row, of course, sits just ahead of him. Roberto Moreno, his first pole position. Gil de Ferran will start alongside. Because they have their choice on the road circuit, Moreno has chosen to start on the right-hand side as the drivers approach the line. The field through the final 2 corners. Now they are on to that long straightaway that is the main straight. And now we'll see how the cone idea is going to work out. Green flag comes out. They spread wide. Into the corner. And 1 spin already.
Looks like Fernandez got into the back of D'Amata there.
Oh, cars all over the place. So whatever they were thinking of, it doesn't look like it's worked. Cristiano D'Amata hits the power and spins the car around. There is Tarso Marquez. It's Michel Jourdain Jr. Takuya Kurosawa. And that looks like it may be Shinji Nakano with his back to us. So the kart safety team already right on top of the situation. Parker, that's just exactly what they didn't want.
Well, they were trying to eliminate one problem. I think they've created another one. Just as they passed the cones, it looks like it was Michel Jourdain Jr. there. Yes, it was. No, I think that was Adrian Fernandez. Ducked around the inside last cone, drove straight to the inside. Watch here as they come down in this area. Watch those cars. They drive straight for the inside. Now, Mauricio Gugelmin's going to have contact as they come around the inside apex. So we can see the hit there between, it looked like Dario Franchitti, Cristiano D'Amata. Fernandez gets through cleanly there, and he's away.
Looking on board from Montoya. This should actually be ahead of a good deal of it, but he sees what's going on, says, I'm not going to have any part of that.
Montoya just runs out of room going through that first corner and has to evade going to the grass. Yeah, and that was Fernandez, Paul, that got into the back of D'Amata. I had another look at it. He was able to continue, but he started the rotation, getting into the back of the right rear of Cristiano D'Amata.
Max Pappas and Helio Castroneves have just made it into the pits. Others, in fact, they're ahead of him, so there is some damage on several cars that would now have to be attended to. Of course, we are under a full course caution.
Time, do it right here. So you didn't touch anything, it was a non-hold.
So the discussion with Max Pappas, Helio Castroneves, they're going to change the nose on that car, and hopefully with a big circuit here, everyone will have plenty of time to get repairs made. We'll be back.
Marconi Grand Prix of Cleveland on ABC Sports. Brought to you by FedEx, proud sponsor of the FedEx Championship Series. Ford Outfitters, no boundaries. And Brewery Fresh Budweiser, official beer of CART. This Bud's for you.
Welcome back to the Marconi Grand Prix of Cleveland. Paul Page, Parker Johnstone, Gary Gerould, and Jan Beekes are in the pits. We are under full course caution, and the reason for that is the very first turn. All of these cars were involved in an incident. Now, you see Shinji Nakano trying to limp back into the pits. A number of others have. And, Parker, you've had a better chance to look at it now.
We had a number of different cars involved in a number of different incidents. One was Bryan Herta coming down between Franchitti and, we'll see it here in just a moment as they get in. Watch it come down. You'll see in this area, watch Bryan Herta try to get in between Franchitti and D'Amata. At the same time, Adrian Fernandez is coming down the inside. You saw the hit there. That started the inside. That got D'Amata rotated, which is where Fernandez had contact. Then watch here. Watch the crash that happens there. The contact that happens slightly there, once again, with the front of D'Amata's car. And then also the incident that happened here. So we had a number of different accidents happening simultaneously.
We can give you the view, too, a little further back in the field from Max Pappas. He goes under the green flag.
Max started back in 14th place, starts to go inside, says, oh, forget this, I'm just going to stay out here. And like Montoya says, the grass is the only place to go without encountering another car.
We also have it. Now look at that, though. He misses everything else, and then he gets into one of the signs just laying on the ground. This is Mark Blundell, a little further back.
Mark Blundell back in 16th, comes down the inside. That's D'Amata in front of him, just misses there, gets back on the throttle.
Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Helio Castroneves came in, Paul. They put a new nose and nose wing assembly on the car, gave him 4 sets of tires. He went out, reported the car had big oversteer. He's just brought it back into the pits, and they've shut down the engine. And he's getting out of the car. He is finished. We'll try to get a word with him in just a moment. Great disappointment for the guy who got his emotional first victory a few weeks ago at Detroit. Let's go to Jan.
And Gary, for Max Papis, we saw him get off the course and clip that debris. He has since been on pit road. They have changed the nose. It took 2 stops, but he did not lose the lap, and he has a brand new nose. Everything else should be okay for Papis.
And you know, actually, those that went off course were pretty lucky. Parker and I were both on the race course last night. There's been some heavy rain here on Thursday and Friday, and a lot of that is still very muddy. And the fact that they got back on the course, well, that was very lucky. We'll be back.
Miles an hour, the fastest point on the circuit. Get a good run out of the chicane, just over 110 miles an hour here. Get up right behind him, drafting down to the last possible moment, then pop out and try to outbrake him. But he's not going to do it. Christian Fittipaldi very late, very hard on the brakes.
Moreno still the leader. The field begins to stretch out. Mauricio Guzman, whatever it might have been that caused him to fall backwards, and there goes the move. As Franchitti now around Blundell. Mauricio Guzman fell backwards from 3rd position all the way back to 6th. Whoa, you talk about smoking the brakes, and Blundell is going to go off course and hopefully get a turn before. Nope.
Oh, and you can see he got his hands off the wheel just before he hit so that he didn't injure his wrists or hands.
And that brings out the full course caution once again. Those tires front a concrete barrier, and Blundell went head on into that. Now, why don't we see a turn? Is it because he's off on wet grass?
Well, he got a great run coming off of Dario after Dario had passed him going into turn 3. Mark got a later apex, a better exit coming off of 4. Started to go down the inside of Dario into turn 5. We'll watch it here. Now watch the brakes lock up. Dario gets in there really deep, just locks him up, so does Mark. Mark's off on the dirty part of the race course. And then once he gets in the grass, he can't get the front tires to roll in order to turn. Now watch the brakes lock here. He's got to avoid Dario as Dario takes his line. And once he's in the grass, he's got his foot on the brake there, and if the wheels are locked, they don't turn.
Another angle yet from high above. D'Amata, you see him moving down along the inside as Blundell goes head on. Pretty frightening moment.
Now watch, Dario will lock him first because he goes in so deep, and a moment later, Mark has to lock them. He locks the brakes to avoid, and he's trying to steer this thing, and now he's just on the brakes going, oh, no!
And wisely pulls his hands off of the wheel. That keeps you from ending up with a broken thumb. So, second full course caution of the day with Roberto Moreno as the leader, 12 laps complete. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations.
For years, Honda engineers have developed the ultimate in racing technology. Innovations that have brought the manufacturers championships, the respect of the entire
Marconi Grand Prix, and we've just taken the green flag once again as Roberto Moreno led the field into turn 1. DeFerrin's right behind him. Michael Andretti and DeFerrin both working as hard as they can, but already Moreno begins to stretch out a lead. Believe it or not, in the time we were away, Mark Blundell was into the pits, had repairs, and is back into the competition.
We saw Fittipaldi go down the inside of Guzman down into turn 1, and we see Paul Tracy working very hard on the back of Adrian Fernandez.
Jan Vika's Pac West team did a marvelous job.
They certainly did. First of all, for Mauricio Guzman, you were asking if he had a problem. I spoke with John Anderson. He said, for some reason, we're just slow on the straight. And as you documented, a very quick nose change for Mark Blundell.
Max Papis quick off and on the course. He was in the pits during that yellow. So was Shinji Nakano, Brian Herta, and Jimmy Vasser. They all made pit stops on the 13th lap. Gary Gerould.
Quick update on the fuel situation, even though it's this early in this race for Roberto Moreno. We were speculating on the theory. We were told by the team that during that yellow, their target was 97.5 laps, they thought, for a two-stop race. They've got enough yellow now. They think it might just slip them over the edge. It's going to be very, very close, but they are in the window possibly where they can do it on two stops thanks to that little incident there by Blundell.
And as already pointed out, Moreno is very good at racing fast and still saving fuel, and pretty tough to catch. He has the added incentive of having never won in this series. He's got his first pole. He finished second a week ago at Portland. And the likable young man from Brazil may, in fact, young man, oldest driver in the series at 41, may, in fact, be on his way to his first win, but there's a long, long way to go. Gil de Ferran sits in second place. Here he comes, followed by Michael Andretti. Michael mounted an early challenge on the restart, but wasn't able to carry it through.
Plus 1.3, plus 1.3.
Roger Penske on the telephone to Gil de Ferran. We look down here from the Honda Helicam. Burke Lake Front Airport, active runways and taxiways all of the year except for this one weekend. A little right then left flick brings them back on to the front stretch. They pass in front of the pits. There's Montoya. He's seventh, slowly trying to work his way up. And Paul Tracy with Christian Fittipaldi right behind him. Tracy started 17th, now 5th.
Take about a little left field if you can. I know it's tough, but remember, overtake always helps you out.
Once again, the caution. Barry Green in the pits. Overtake, he's talking about the famous button.
Drivers have a button on the steering wheel so that no matter what fuel-saving conservation mode they're in, if they push that button, it advances the ignition timing in the engine, puts it to full power, full fuel, as long as they're full throttle. As soon as they lift, it goes out of overtake mode and goes back to whatever previous fuel strategy they had dialed in on their wheel.
The yellow and white number 8 Shell car, that's Kenny Brack. Rookie here, leading the rookie points fight. In fact, Luis Garcia Jr. with a serious problem in the engine room. He's out of the car and therefore out of competition. Tracy's still trying to work his way forward. The Ford engines in both that car, Christian Fittipaldi, and a little further forward in third place, Michael Andretti, appear to be working just fine. They, of course, had an oil leak in the morning warm-up, and they had to scrap much of the warm-up and go change engines. And Jan Bikas, that meant that they didn't necessarily get all the tires ready that they wanted.
No, that is true, Paul, but I believe that they've been able to go back to some tires that they used in practice so they don't have to put brand new sticker tires on during the race. The specific cause of the oil leak, according to Ford Cosworth, is that there is a seal in the oil pump itself that is leaking. They're not sure what's causing it, but they changed both the engines for those cars, as you said, and they were very worried those first couple laps because, again, they don't know what caused it.
Now, there's no indication that they would be having that problem now, but then again, we might not be able to see such a thing. I think the first way it would appear to us if some of that oil began to spray at the back of the car and create a little fume of vapor, or if it would get off onto the hot exhaust pipes and we'd see a little smoke.
Well, the other thing that I'm sure we'll see in the final stages of this race is this track is so bumpy that it puts a premium on gearboxes, half shafts, engines, anything bolted to the car that can be rattled or shaken loose. Usually with 10-15 laps to go, there's usually a dramatic change in the complexion of this race as mechanical parts start to shed off these cars.
You can actually see how rough this course is. Of course, that's exactly what everybody expects when they come here. It is, after all, an airport. Parker drove around it quite a bit, and pretty amazing how bumpy it is. It's hard to believe that cars are going over this at 150, 160, 70, 180 miles an hour.
Well, last night when you and I drove around the circuit a few times, if you can feel the big bumps we did in our rental car, imagine how bumpy it is in these very stiffly sprung, very low cars. The drivers come away from this weekend with bruised heels, bruised backs, bruised elbows from the pounding they take during the 100 laps they race here.
We were talking about Kenny Brack as we look for this man, Cristiano D'Amata, who was part of that tangle on the very first lap with Franchitti right behind him, and working Franchitti also involved in that. But Kenny Brack has had a pretty expensive year for car owners Bobby Rahal and Dave Letterman. Seems like almost every race he's had some contact with a wall, including here. But when you're talking suspension parts and pieces of carbon fiber, it gets pretty expensive pretty quick.
And I talked to their team manager, Scott Remke, and he told me, he said, well, at least when Kenny's gone off, he's one of the quickest in the session going for the pole, or at least at the front of the race. So they say for now, that's acceptable, but at some point it's got to change.
I'll tell you what, as we watch Brack try to move on Mauricio Guzman, he doesn't seem to recognize that the walls are there at all. If that track is 45 feet wide, he's going out 44 feet 11 inches up to the wall. We're watching Mauricio Guzman, Kenny Brack, Gary Gerould.
And as Mauricio tries to hang on to that position, Paul, he has radioed his team saying that he thinks that the engine is flat. That prompts an interesting thought, because Jan had talked with that team, and Jan, you can answer the situation relating to a special qualifying engine that Mercedes-Benz had yesterday for Mo that enabled him to grab the third starting position on the grid.
Yeah, that's right, Gary. It turned out that Mercedes found something on the dyno about a week ago, and they only had time to build one engine. So they kind of had a bit of a competition amongst their runners, saying that if you're the fastest in practice, we'll give you this special qualifying engine. And Mauricio Guzman got it. He ran it effectively and stuck the car up on the front row. But it's not ready for racing yet. They only have one built.
You'll see a lot of what you just saw well back. Oh, Christian very close as he continues to fight back there with Tracy. Now Tracy's going to fight with everybody.
What a great move. You can see Tracy take it right back as he flat-tracked his car through turn one. Got a great exit coming off that corner. Came up side by side with Adrian Fernandez.
He's going for Fernandez now. Montoya is also trying to move on Fittipaldi. Here comes Fernandez. Tracy right behind him. Christian Fittipaldi and Juan Montoya come into view.
And that's one of those cases where I think Tracy came off the corner, pro rally style, just hit the overtake button, kept his foot in it, was able to get away from Christian Fittipaldi, and was able to close up so quickly on Adrian Fernandez.
Look at this as they were coming down the front stretch, turning into the corner.
Whoa, just clipped the front of his nose. Now watch Tracy here. Hangs the back end out, gets a great exit on Fernandez.
When he is on it, Tracy is so good. Now working on Adrian Fernandez. Behind that entire battle is Mauricio Guzman, still trying to pedal as fast as he can and keep up, but he's under attack by Kenny Brack and the rookie Alex Tagliani. There comes Brack. So Kenny Brack moves into 8th place. Roberto Moreno is still the leader. At the Marconi Grand Prix of Cleveland, Gil de Ferran and Michael Andretti are trying to close.
Marconi Grand Prix of Cleveland. This Toyota Spotlight focuses on Paul Tracy. He's here. Want to know how to go from 17th to 6th place on the opening lap? Watch this. They come down through the corner. Once again, we'll watch the contact. Watch Paul Tracy now. He comes through. He's right there. Avoids all of the conflict. Picks up 11 spots.
And with a little harder driving, Tracy has gotten around Fittipaldi. You saw that, and moved into 5th place. Since we've been away, nothing has changed. No one in the pits. Moreno is still the leader, followed by de Ferran and Michael Andretti. Jan Beekes.
Speaking of Paul Tracy, Barry Green just told him on the radio, if you can do just a little bit better on fuel, you can gain us one more lap. This telemetry is so sophisticated that you...
9.5 Moreno +1 Christian.
And of course, those are the intervals from and behind the cars you're involved with.
But if we're going to play a race where trying to stretch fuel as far as you can is the game, and that's usually pretty exciting stuff, Roberto Moreno is one of the best at it, and he now leads Joe DeBaron by 2.3 seconds. This is a little further back in the field, and it's a pretty good fight. You saw Kenny Brack make his move just before we went away. He now sits right behind Montoya, who is closing on Fittipaldi, and Alex Tagliani is trying to close the back of Kenny Brack. And in fact, once they would close up on Montoya, then Montoya has everything up to 4th place lined up in front of him. Interval, you saw 1st and 2nd come through, then 3rd place Michael. Here comes that battle.
Now, nice and smooth.
Reference for Kenny Brack.
And whether he is or not, that's what you want to tell your driver, to kind of keep him psyched up and charging all the time. If the driver's too analytical, they say, hey, wait a second, I'm not catching the guy in front of me. How can I be the fastest driver? But usually drivers don't think that far through the communication. You want to keep pushing them all the time. It's very hot outside today. It's in the mid-80s. It's humid. Cockpit temperatures in the 130, 135 degree range. And the bumps put a real strain on the conditioning of the driver.
But of course you, whose nickname is Post Hole, you were never bothered by the heat, by the humidity. You drove steadfastly through, didn't you, Parker?
Well, I tell you, for drivers that train as hard as these guys do, they actually wish for difficult conditions, because if they've got a very good training regimen, they're hoping that the
balance.
They're hoping that the heat and the bumps will wear down their competitors and give them an advantage.
Parker, a quick question from the pits. When you've got a small driver like Moreno or D'Amata, are they at any kind of physical disadvantage because you have to manhandle the car as much over the bumps here?
Well, that's always the balance, is you want a driver that's as small as possible for the weight advantage, but at the same time, they have to be physically strong enough, just not have the endurance, but the actual strength to be able to push the pedals and turn the wheel under 3G loadings. And if you talk about Moreno or D'Amata, those guys are incredibly fit. They spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day.
Hit three.
Cycling, running, swimming, weightlifting. But I think any lighter than these guys, Moreno about 125 pounds, same for D'Amata, and you're just too small to be physically strong enough to handle these 1,550, 900 horsepower cars.
So you heard the call go out to Moreno, and no doubt to the rest of the front of the order, that very shortly they will be called into the pits. 30 laps are complete. This would put them on the game plan. The early yellows have been very helpful in terms of stretching the fuel mileage just as far as they can. Roberto Moreno is the leader. We'll be back.